Hello, everyone, and welcome to a very, very special edition of Living on Music. I'm Steve Hauk, and boy, do we have a treat for you tonight, especially if you are a Grateful Dead fan. But even if you're just a huge music fan, this is an amazing ride with John Kadlecik, who was in the band Furthur with Bob and Phil. He has been founded Dark Star Orchestra and all that. An amazing ride that we are going to take any minute. And so stay tuned. And right after the show tonight, join Virginia Amos, who is going to be talking to the first of the candidates for city council and mayor on a 2-week run of ZTV, who's interviewing different candidates, finding out, their beliefs, their mission, what they want to bring to Alexandria and the area. And it's going to be exciting. Tonight at 8:30, you can talk to Bill Rossello, and Bill is going to be on with Virginia. So that's coming up right after tonight's amazing version of Living on Music. So in the fall of 1979, I was an 18-year-old sophomore at the University of Hartford in Connecticut. Been a diehard rock and roll fan for probably 4 or 5 years at that point. Special shine for Southern rock. Connecticut, it was really big. Leonard Skinner was huge. We had seen them in 1977, 3 months before the plane crash. Allman Brothers, Marshall Tucker, the Outlaws, had seen all of them multiple times. Even think I saw the Outlaws like 5 times on one tour, including Madison Square Garden. So they were on a roll. And speaking of Madison Square Garden, I was also a hard rock fan and loved Aerosmith and Led Zeppelin, and saw them at Madison Square Garden in 1976 and 1977. And I also, at that time, fell for a guy named Springsteen. I wasn't a fan leading up to college. And my roommate, Jim Cox from Ridgewood, New Jersey, brought Darkness on the Edge of Town back from Christmas vacation, and the rest is history. It began a lifetime love and obsession for Bruce Springsteen, and it was college generated. And speaking of college generated, another band I began to adhere to closely, fell for their unbelievable swath of different kinds of music, all blended together and having their own sound too, was, of course, the Grateful Dead. And thanks to college friends like with Jim and Bruce, I fell hard for the Grateful Dead at University of Hartford. People like Barry Scheinthal, our biggest Deadhead on campus and friend of ours, would relentlessly play the Dead, bring in albums, say this is why you need to love these guys. And it was like breathing kind of new, wild, fabulous musical air. They're so invigorating and so wonderfully talented. It was a great, great introduction to the Dead in college. On October 24th, 1979, we went here. And this is a picture of Springfield Civic Center in Springfield, Massachusetts. And that is a Dead show, and it could very well be my show. In fact, I was sitting kind of where I would be turned around, exactly there. Had an incredible experience for my first Grateful Dead show. And as you can see here, the ticket that I still have, the stub, it was playing about 10 shows. They played 10 shows in their career there. This was my first Dead show that I'd ever seen, and it was $8.50 a ticket. Just an incredible place. Truly monumental experience to see them for the first time, and psychedelic in some ways, but we won't go there right now. But it began a love of the Dead that for me would last and lasts to this day. After Jerry Garcia passed in 1995, only a few months after a bunch of us saw the Dead at RFK Stadium here in DC with an opening set by a guy named Bob Dylan, who Jerry joined on stage. That was an incredible opening to the show. The surviving members of the Dead post Jerry birthed multiple machinations to continue to at least keep the Dead's presence breathing, keep them playing the music that they had been playing for so many years, 25, almost 30 years. And bands like The Other Ones, which is the first Dead spin-off band that I ever saw. I saw them at Nissan Pavilion, the first tour they did. And I remember having friends that were Deadheads, one in particular, who began to cry when the show started because they were so moved that the Dead was back, that Jerry wasn't there. Bruce Hornsby was playing with him. But there was something missing, yet it was the Dead, and Phil and Bill and Mickey and and Bobby and the core of the Dead were there. So there were spinoffs. The Dead and Company had tickets to see them in the pandemic, got blown up, but have seen other spinoffs. So the Dead was another one. Phil Lesh and Friends. Phil had his own. Phil Lesh and the Terrapin Family Band. You had Bobby's bands, and those were the bands that kept the Dead's legacy alive and continue to do so. As did an offshoot that launched in 2009 that was basically considered to be totally unexpected, yet one of the better Dead spinoff bands by some opinions for sure. And it featured Bob Weir, Phil Lesh, and my amazing guest tonight, John Kadlecik. John was described at the time as a scarily Jerry-similar guitarist and singer from the country's top Grateful Dead tribute band, which he had started 12 years before Furthur, Dark Star Orchestra. And we will be talking about the evolution of Dark Star Orchestra, how he joined Furthur, and what it was like to walk in after seeing the Dead in 1989 and starting Dark Star Orchestra in 1997. To join Bob and Phil and play the Dead music for a good amount of time, 5 years. Incredible story. John Kadlecik is not only a true and lasting treasure to the Grateful Dead legacy, but he is also just a revered and respected longtime singer, songwriter, musician who, yes, plays music other than the Dead, including his own. He's done improvisationally oriented shows, recorded some of his own music, has a great solo record and some EPs, has a solo record called On the Road that I love, came out in 2018. We'll be playing a song from that tonight. And he is currently active. In fact, they are hitting the road. A couple of days ago and into this week where my show's airing with Melvin Seals and the JGB, obviously without JG, Jerry Garcia Band, but they are going forward and playing a lot of Jerry stuff, some other cover kind of stuff, some original stuff across the country and the world. And John is not stopping with the John K Band. John Kadlecik Band, he's got an amazing thing going with them and has for a number of years. And also since 2014, so now 7 years, with Golden Gate Wingmen, which is another all-star group that John fronts. So that is the kind of shining moments that you're going to see tonight on this very special edition. And for a Dead fan, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a warm Living on Music welcome to Mr. John Kadlecik. John Kadlecik, thank you so much for being here. How are you, man?
I'm doing all right, Steve. How you doing?
I'm doing really well. This is, again, one of those moments as a 60-year-old rock and roll fan that I am absolutely thrilled to have you here with us.
Shucks.
Well, you know, you go back into the realm of music that we all feel in our souls, and it's just wonderful. Plus a lot of amazing stuff I've found in the last month that I've been doing some research. But again, I've been watching what you've been doing in this last year, and that's what one day I won't have to ask musicians like you, hey, how you been this last year? But I want you to just give us a little bit of how have you been dealing with the fact that, you know, again, live music is something that's hasn't been existing. You've been doing a lot of streaming. How have you been feeling? How have you been doing this last year, John?
Well, you know, I guess there was like everyone, there was when it first came down, it was kind of like, well, what's going to happen next, you know? I didn't know, and no one knew how long it was going to last. So, you know, a little bit first, it was just kind of like shock for a few months. I kind of didn't really, I mean, we played right, you know, we were on tour with Melvin Seals.
Yeah.
You know, right up to the point where they were starting to shut stuff down. And the last show we did was, you know, was really sparsely attended. And, you know, probably, you know, maybe we could talk about whether it should have been shut down sooner or,
right.
or what, or, you know, or if it should have been, you know, a national hard lockdown, you know, maybe if we'd just had a 10-day hard lockdown,
right.
We wouldn't have had to do like 12 months of rolling lockdowns.
Right.
But you know, whatever.
Yeah. What was the
tough hindsight is 2020.
It sure is.
Oh, geez.
You know, and the toughest thing must have been for a while, at least until the last 6 months, maybe, where you've been or so, where you've been able to play with your band. see people, feel them on stage with you, at least if you can't have audience?
Yeah, a little bit here and there. Like it was, I had been doing solo shows, more or less sort of like adventure gig in between, full blown tours and stuff. I could fly in somewhere with 2 checked bags and a carry on, and I could do my whole looping,
Right.
guitar synth solo show, one man Grateful Dead band.
Yeah.
And I've been working on that for a while, actually building it out, but just only doing so many gigs, so it was fortunate that that was something I could kind of, like as things opened up for only 50 people,
Yeah.
in attendance or whatever, that's not it's not enough tickets to sustain a band.
No, it's not.
But what the costs of putting a band up in in hotels for a night is a, if I don't have that on itself is actually a decent payday still, as it were, or so I've been getting that in. I've had a little bit of people have been generous with tipping on the live stream, and
Nice.
like I said, sporadic shows here and there as things open and close back down, and
Right.
it's been kind of, in some ways it's been a minor blessing in that it's been bigger rooms that I wouldn't normally play in solo. That it's been nice, like for instance, the Birchmere.
Yes.
And normally I'd have to be able to get 500 people in there for solo for them to even want to book me.
Right.
But instead I get to be a nice stage, nice sound system, professional team, and it's been a minor blessing in that regard, I guess.
Yeah, that's really ironic. I was going to ask you and about that gig. I had Gary and Michael on my show about 4 months ago, and
Cool.
just love them. I've been known them for many years as a music writer, and I saw you were playing there, and I'm like, I want to go, and then I'm like, crap, I don't have my double vaccine yet, and it's like, what is this? What life are we leading here? I mean, they've done whatever they can, and Gary's given it a shot. I have noticed you've been very busy streaming galore in 2020.
Well, I mean,
pretty amazing stuff every month, once a month.
Right. I guess I wouldn't. I know people who are streaming every day, so
well, okay.
But it's because it's still like every time is still like putting together a piece of IKEA furniture, right. And I'll be like 5 minutes before showtime, and all of a sudden, like how come the audio's not talking from one part of the computer to the other, and I've got to start Google searching, and that's not necessarily the best headspace to go into performance, but whatever. Everything is its own kind of unique. But it
kept you kind of creative and busy, right? Yeah. Kept things rolling.
Well, it was fun to kind of work up the multi-camera thing and learn, the OBS software and how to be my own director and video producer at the same time. I learned a few fun like special effects tricks from the sort of video game streaming community.
Right.
Has a lot of little instructional videos on how to do fun little tricks with OBS. But.
Right. Oh, you did those. I could tell. In fact, we're gonna start to show people a little bit of what you've been doing in this last year of quarantining and kind of continuing to try to keep the wonderful music you do going. This is from October of 2020. This is a YouTube solo, the Acoust-Electric live stream that you were doing, and it shows you doing a little bit of violin.
Oh, all right.
Yeah, John, that's what I love is just, people know you for your guitar playing as exemplary, but it's neat to see that violin come in now and then. And we'll talk a little bit when in a few minutes about how you began the violin back in the day and became a player. I've got a couple more real quick clips from the streaming world you were just in. One was from June of 2020, and it is another YouTube live stream. I love your quote though on it. It said, "I dedicate this performance to the unbroken chain of mitochondrial DNA every human on the planet shares with the same ancient ancestor." So where did that come from?
I don't know. That's just my take on unbroken chain being, at least on one sense, a metaphor for,
Right.
DNA and hereditary information.
Yes, exactly. And John, I have to tell you that I put a speaker in the window of my dorm room at the University of Hartford, which I mentioned earlier was where I saw the Dead the first time when I was 18 in 1979. I put the speaker in the window to woo a girl named Kathy Ryan and played Unbroken Chain, and it went campus wide. And I got struck down by the RAs and taken to Judd board, and I beat the case. So the Dead had already started to help me get through all of the restrictions that life was going to provide. But this is what I love when you did this. You guys, this is a wonderful version of probably one of my top 5, and it's hard. It's like putting the top 5 Beatles.
Which one is this going to be?
This is a little bit of from Mars Hotel. This is Unbroken Chain.
Looking for familiar faces in an empty window pane. Listening for the secrets, searching for the sound. But I can only hear the preacher and the baying of his hounds. Willow sky, well, I walk and wonder why. They say love your brother, but you will catch it when you try. They'll roll you down the line, boy, drop you for a loss, ride you out on a cold railroad and nail you to a cross. November and more as I wait for the score. They're telling me forgiveness is the key to every door. A cold winter's day, a night like forever, sink like a stone, float like a feather.
it's been a fun one to expand, sort of like the simultaneous parallel instrument, where I can kind of have I have the acoustic sound, I have a bass sound, and there's an organ sound,
Right.
kind of all being activated live.
Yeah, I bet.
Different strings.
And you do a beautiful job with it, man.
Nice.
Totally. Go to about 2.5 months ago, you did a show. Now, what is, again, just a bunch of people know this. You've got a wonderful fan base. Splintered Sunlight. With you playing, where did this come from, this free live webcast at the Ardmore?
Well, we've done a few things together over the years.
Yeah.
Like Butchie was, Butchie, the lead guitar player and kind of band leader of Splintered Sunlight, is, he's been playing a long time in this area, and so people have grown to love and depend on him for their musical sustenance between between big shows, as it were, or whatever. And he was actually the first guy that it's at some point with Dark Star Orchestra, I was the only guy that that if I wasn't there, got sick, whatever, the show wouldn't happen.
Right.
The show would be canceled if I got sick, and there was, there was some pressure on that.
Wow.
That we would do, pretty much anybody. I mean, if if the bass player got sick, we could just do a show that didn't have Phil songs in it. If Rob Eaton got sick, then we could do a Jerry Garcia band show. If one of the drummers got sick, we'd do a one drummer show. Anyway, you get what I'm saying. Is just so like I kind of like started to do my own reach out to find like potential subs, basically. And Butchie was one of the first guys I invited to just kind of like sub for me at a show where I didn't need it, so like if should it come up sometime, we'd have somebody to call.
Right.
So he was one of and we've maintained contact since then. I think that was probably like 2005 or 2006 or something like that. Wow. I think that was at well, I don't know what it's called anymore. It was called Mexicali Blues Cafe in New Jersey.
Oh, wow. Wow, that's fun. Those guys have been together for a while as well.
Yeah, I know that. I think maybe the lineups changed, but Butchie's always been there, and and they had me. I don't remember which one this was. We've done a few. The last one I actually got to kind of dig into my Bobby licks.
Oh God!
And, do a lot of Weir songs and kind of just really if it's the one where it's just me and Butchie on guitar, then that's probably it. If before that we'd had me as like a third guitarist,
right? And
which I've done a bunch of times with Phil Lesh, and so that's another easy one to I've got some experience at finding third guitar parts for Grateful Dead music already. So
I bet you.
So I'm not sure which clip you got here.
Well, in fact, I think you've queued us up perfectly, John, without even planning the segue. This is from February at the Ardmore, and this is a Bob Weir generated song, one of my favorites. See, as host and producer of the show, I can kind of pick some of my favorite songs too, as long as they show and highlight you a lot of the way. Yeah, this is Splintered Sunlight with John Kadlecik, free live webcast from Ardmore, a little Cassidy.
I've seen where the wolf has slept by the silver street. I can tell by the mark he left to it in his dream. Oh, child, look down the street. Oh, child, about the sea. What you are, what you're meant to be. You were born to be Cassidy.
Yeah, John, we almost named our first daughter Cassidy.
Oh,
Went to Kelly, but Cassidy was right there because of that song. And what a beautiful job, and what a fun thing to play live, right? It
mm.
must have felt good. At least, how many people ended up being out there watching you guys play in person for that particular show in February?
Again, I gotta say I don't remember the exact statistics
Yeah,
on that.
it was a handful.
I
I
was
mean,
much, it was a treat to get to play with a full band, and they're a pretty damn good band, I think.
yeah, they're a damn good band, and fun. We have some clips that we're going to show in a little while where they of full crowds, with Furthur and stuff like that, and it's like, boy, those days will be back for you soon, my friend. You know they will. You got we're going to delve back. This is your life, John, and we're going to have some fun, kind of talking a little bit about how you got where you got a little bit. Born in Council Bluffs. In a hell of a year to be born, in our history, 1969, right?
Yep, same year in the as Cracker Barrel.
Yeah.
I know that's the year. That's the statistic you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that's the only one I'm talking about. I was 8 years old. I was an 8-year-old Mets fan, and they won the World Series, unexpectedly. So that's 90, and plus the moon, the landing on the moon and Woodstock. So hell of a year to bring you into the world. But you moved.
And the internet, people think of the internet as a '90s thing. Pretty much the core of it was actually created in '69.
Oh God.
There was only like maybe 4 computers talking to each other with it, but
That is great. Well, yeah, a breeding year for all, and you came into the world, which was a good thing for many. You moved every 3 to 5 years, right? And how was that as a young boy?
well, it's the only thing I had, so yeah, it's
Right.
hard to really compare it to anything else. My dad was a city manager, and
Yes.
it's kind of like a CEO job for a city, but it doesn't pay as well.
Right.
and
Right.
and if you want a raise or you want a promotion of some sort, you got to go get it from another city. So
Wow.
and I get I maybe benefited to some degree from a lot of his choices were maybe based more on the quality of the local school system.
Right.
For
Right.
when he took new jobs, so.
Oh, that's
Uh,
cool. It was Omaha, it was Cincinnati, it was Davenport. When did it seems like in Davenport you began to study violin, right? Classical violin.
yeah, that's true.
Did that begin? Where did the music soul of John Kadlecik come in?
I'm gonna say it's a 1-2 punch of like the early Beatles recordings, and particularly Help through Magical Mystery Tour.
Wow.
And I listen, and the Yellow Submarine movie,
Yeah.
and the string arrangements. So the string arrangements on Beatles songs, and then the Star Wars movie came out, and so my first LP that I bought was the Star Wars soundtrack.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
That's a cool first album. I haven't heard
uh,
that from any of my guests yet as a first album. I've heard Rush 2112, Jeff Beck, I think one of my guitarist guests had. You had the Star Wars soundtrack because you love the orchestration.
yeah, and it's catchy hooks. It's modern composition,
Yeah.
but with this the symphonic arrangement,
Right.
and
Right.
yeah, I mean, it was a double album. Mine came with the cool like uh, oil painting poster of the final battle. All the TIE fighters and X-wings going at it over the Death Star,
Oh
and
God.
and that those two between the Beatles and John Williams are really my
Yeah.
and I went deep in studying violin. I didn't really listen to much pop music at the time.
Right.
Beatles. By the time I was in junior high, Beatles were considered oldies music by even my violin playing.
Right.
Uh, fellow students,
Yes.
and
It is amazing how much they have had an influence on people. And again, just even in this last year, I've talked to so many people. It always comes up. It's like they gave us that that surge of this is what I either want to do or what I adore, and seeing where it would go from that. When you were 14, you moved to Chicago, and auditioned to the third chair of an honors orchestra as a freshman. That had to be an entering freshman coming in, and so how long did you play in that orchestra?
It was, I think it was just a couple of seasons, because the flip side of that was that I went from the school program, the public school program I was in Davenport. Actually was really well curated for string players and orchestral students in particular, where I'd have the same instructor that came to my fourth grade class and put a record on the turntable with different pitch tones and tested us on our ability to tell whether the second tone was higher, lower, or the same. Wow. Was the same teacher that would have been my senior, that would have graded my senior, performances. And
yes.
And I was kind of I had a junior high. The junior high I went to in Davenport had 16 violins and 8 cellos, 2 violas, and twice a week we had a wind section, some band players that signed up for orchestral study. And so I walked in, but then we moved to Chicago, a suburb called Palatine.
Right.
And right before I started my freshman year of high school, might have been 83. I can't remember if it was 83 or 84, but and I walk into class looking forward to thinking I'm going to, the high school I was going to had an orchestra, an honors orchestra, a chamber ensemble program. And and I go walk into orchestra and there's 10 other students there.
Oh God.
In a school of 2,500 students,
Wow.
So, it's sort of a mixed accolade to say that I auditioned at that. But I mean, it's still, out of all the, out of 5 high schools worth of string players, the first and second chair were seniors at my school.
Right.
And I got the third chair.
Yeah.
And, I learned, I got some good performance experience with that, and, committed to memory, the first violin part of the entire Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, at one point. But,
wow. And that led right into a high school ride that began your improvisational mindset.
Yeah, well, I sort of got, I kind of started to get curious about improvisation. And, the teacher I had, he was a decent teacher. I don't know that he was the reason why the program was so weak, but so he kind of when I asked him about improvisation, his response was to put me into a trio setting, playing sight reading for like a teacher's break room.
Right.
And just sort of said, well, just keep up, make up notes but keep up. Don't worry about missing notes.
Wow.
Skip notes if needed, add extra notes as needed, but keep up.
Oh,
it was a bigger leap than I was ready for at that point, honestly. And, but then I got, spent a week at, while my dad was out of town for a city manager's convention kind of thing. I spent a week at a friend's house who was a year older than me, and so he had a job, is what the offshoot of him being a year older than me was, and but he also had a guitar. So I got not much to do but sit around at this guy's house, look at the Mel Bay book, and play an acoustic guitar and work through this Mel Bay book. And,
wow!
And after a week, I'd pretty much worked through the whole book. Was
that your first touch of guitar?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So there it is, right there. Where's that friend now, John?
Oh my God, he's out there.
Oh, that's classic.
TJ Trutman.
Well, TJ should get some accolades from your fan base. That is wonderful, though. And you started even doing some bass, some mandolin, some drums, some engineering. Things started. Was that when it clicked? Like, music is going to be where I'm going to go for the rest of my life? Or theoretically,
I was starting to take it a bit, to look at it as a serious direction, or at least a very fulfilling
Right.
you know,
And then you
pursuit.
you began some garage bands, including Nightshade.
Yeah.
That's fun. Early classic hard rock. I mean, there you go. You
Yeah.
started in the classic form. Nightshade was just some friends, some high school buddies getting
Yeah.
together. Yeah.
And it had gone through a couple of names. It was a band I joined. I was in a computer programming class with a drummer and a bass player, and I was just starting to play guitar, and they're like, well, I don't know if you're, you know. And then and I had been kind of like still kind of like chasing improvisation and not quite getting it.
Right.
But I'd started to learn some blues licks, and I didn't quite understand how they worked. But then as soon as I played with a drummer and a bass player, and I said, well, let's just do some 12-bar blues, and then 20 minutes later,
right,
I'm like, oh, I think I get improvisation now.
Right.
But in a lot of ways, it's baked into guitar. Just the way the strings are tuned and the way it's set up. The standard tuning has its own sort of improvisational muse that's kind of handed to you with learning your first few blues positions and stuff.
Well, speaking of improvisational muse, you around 87, I guess it was your first kind of psychedelic jam band. What was the name of that band? Do you remember?
Oh, it might have been Clear Eyes or something like that.
Yeah, I love these names that people tell me about in their first bands. One the other day was what was it? Viewer discretion, and you just don't know what's going to come up. But that's right. Great. What did that? And that gave you a little more sense again, playing in that rocket or that band environment to be able to do a little.
Yeah, we're just kind of sort of maybe. Yeah, starting to dig deeper into Led Zeppelin, Pink Floyd, Jethro Tull.
Right. Right.
And then the drummer in that band started turning me on to the Grateful Dead.
Yes.
So we played a lot, like maybe I learned China Cat Sunflower for that band before I really knew much about the Dead.
Yeah.
That was my first.
That is a wonderful moment, because obviously there was a few things happen later on with the Dead. We'll get to nothing major, only like being part of their band. But your first show, Fierce Dead show, was in '89. Where was that? The first?
That was Chicago suburb, Rosemont Horizon.
Oh yeah,
it's called the Allstate Arena now, but it used to be the Rosemont Horizon.
I remember the name Rosemont Horizon for years growing up. That wasn't Chicago. What did that? And again, as much as you can remember, 20 years old at that show.
Or maybe 19 early.
Given what went on over the next 20, 30 years with joining Phil and Bob and becoming a kind of a staple of the Dead environment, what did that show fill you with anything? Did you see it and then say, okay, that was great, and then move on to other things? Or did they really give you some pause?
Well, it was it was a bit of a wake up of I'd seen a few live, a number of bigger live concerts, and
right.
I saw, I was also playing live, so I could kind of see where compromise, different bands dealt with what they perceived as a compromise in the live situation of not being able to play all the parts that are on the record without hiring extra musicians or. Right. And then I go see the Grateful Dead, and like, whoa, here's a band that makes their live stuff sound better and newer, than their studio recordings. And the other thing that was going on was I sort of had, my early, choosing the psychedelic rock path was I thought I was going to try and, I was getting turned on to some other genres, the new age genre in particular, where I liked the vibe, but it's too smooth,
Right. What new age bands that jumped out at you then, John?
Well, I have the Will Ackerman and some of the Windham Hill artists, and
sure.
Michael Hedges and
right.
But I was like, well, how can we get some kind of something that has the spirit kind of what the new age music was about, but had like still had like the edginess and the dirtiness and nastiness of Led Zeppelin and Pink Floyd or whatever.
Right. Right.
And so then seeing the Grateful Dead, it was like, oh, well, that's what they're doing.
Wow.
Oh, geez. Okay. Yeah. Well, now what do I do? Right. So and I, in my early years, the studying was definitely not so much about trying to emulate it or becoming, striving to become a tribute band or anything like that. It was learning stuff to figure out what they'd done and try and find where what they'd left undiscovered still.
Well, absolutely. And it clearly had an impact at that point. You did get a little interested in, as you said, jazz and folk music, which again, the folk was a big part of the Dead early on, bluegrass, but again, there was such a mesh of wonderful sounds of theirs. And you 1990, around 21, you started performing with Uncle Buffalo's Urban Mountain Review. Was that a positive experience in your evolution through the 90s as you got towards Dark Star?
Yeah, well, that was that was the first time someone scouted me and offered me a gig. Came to see me play with the band. I had a band before that. It was called Pogo Web.
Oh,
it was the bass player's phone number. You sign the numbers to the letters and stuff and try and make up a word. So when you tell people your number or whatever, this guy was had come up with Pogo Web, and I was like that's a great band name,
right? That really is.
But it was like probably that the band was starting to wind down. We'd only done a couple of gigs and just done a lot of basement rehearsals and living room rehearsals, and so the guys from Uncle Buffalo came to this gig and then approached me afterward and said, "You want to come play with us?" And so,
wow.
So then they had a Friday night house gig in the Loop.
Oh,
wow. So I got some fun early gigging stories, like, when a guy rolls in, it wasn't like, it was just like a Friday night, it was mostly business people, and we were sort of like alt folk before they were calling it that, or alt country or whatever, The banjo player played a 6-string banjo and he wailed away on it like he was Johnny Rotten on guitar. There was no claw hammer. There was no, but he was a hell of a harmonica player.
Oh my God.
And then the other guitar player was also a harmonica player, and more in the folky harmonica style, from Lennon, Dylan, Neil Young kind of thing.
Right.
The first guy was just a ripping blues player who was chasing, starting to chase the Blues Traveler licks and stuff like that.
Oh God, yeah. And
John Popper.
And Uncle Buffalo lasted, I think, about a year?
Yeah, about a year or so. And
Hairball Willie, and that actually you got a CD out of that experience.
A whole bunch of that became kind of like my main project, and I thought it was going to be a lifetime project, but
right.
Things go the way they go. We did they had a demo with their previous guitar player or an EP. And we were playing some of that stuff, and we were playing, and starting to write new songs. And, by the end of my time in Hairball Willie, we'd written close to 30 songs actually.
Oh, wow.
And, but then, like a couple of guys, decided to leave to start a new project. I don't know if they thought we were doing too much Grateful Dead or what.
Right.
Where I was just sort of like, well, like the Dead play covers, like everybody plays covers. It's not a thing. It wasn't a thing to me. It was just more about, playing live and writing are completely different skill sets,
Right. And in 96, 97, there you go. You had a brief stint with Uncle John's band, an actual direct cover band. That was the first time it seems like you delved right in.
That was the first time I got to, to really be like, I'm actually a full-time musician now, and playing, 2 to 4 shows a weekend,
right?
3 or 4 weekends a month,
right?
And I could actually completely give up the day job,
right.
But and they were writing, but unfortunately, it was kind of a band that wasn't. They were in a place they'd been through a lot of players. They're sort of founding singer guitarist had left the project, and so now they were just kind of trying to keep it lean as a 4-piece, and
right.
And I was like, what, to do this music right, we really need to go to a 5-piece and maybe a 6-piece, add some drums,
right.
And unfortunately the pushback was just, but that means we'll have to split the the pay up by more. And I'm like, well, but what if the pay what if we start making more money because of this?
Right.
Like, what if it makes, and like, I don't know. But it fell on deaf ears. But in the joining Uncle John's band, the audition process, the bass player Kevin Rosen introduced me to a guy who'd been kicked out of Uncle John's band twice, Mike Murat, and
Wow.
and the three of us, like before I played my first gig with Uncle John's band, he arranged a jam for the three of us in Mike's basement,
Oh,
and we went through like half the catalog just on the fly, including lots of songs that maybe only one or two of the three of us knew, and found that the second or third could keep up
right.
and do pretty good, do pretty well with it.
Right.
And of course, Mike immediately wanted us to bail on Uncle John's band and start a new band with him right away. And I was like, well, I haven't even played my first gig with these guys yet,
Yeah, give me a minute.
But it wasn't too long, and honestly, we sort of kept like informal jams up every few months, kind of trying out different players.
Right.
And eventually Uncle John's, Uncle John's band was just not, it wasn't, it was at odds with itself,
Right.
half the band was Deadheads and half the band were kind of, maybe they like the Dead, but they're not, but it was just a good gig for them. And,
right.
And they didn't want to rock the boat. And I'm like, well, what do you got? Just like, how can you play Grateful Dead music and not be about rocking the boat?
Right.
I used to kind of put my Karate Kid thing in with
right.
With psychedelic rock, yes, psychedelic rock, no, but psychedelic rock, maybe, squish like grape, right?
Right. It's like, whoop. Oh, that's fantastic. And that's I mean,
so
it wasn't until it was shortly after that how did Dark Star at 28 evolve?
Well, so for a little while I had, while Uncle John's band, while I was still in Uncle John's band, I was having these Sunday afternoon just party jams with a roommate and a drummer friend of his and a guitar player that I just met in across town, and and that was actually kind of like doing some violin. Actually, I played violin in Uncle John's band too for a couple of songs here and there, but
sweet.
Yeah. But so this was like trying to be a little more fusion. We're just learning some Jean-Luc Ponty, learning some Mahavishnu Orchestra.
Wow.
Trying to write some, our own sort of proto acid jazz or soul jazz or whatever, kind of doing that kind of thing. And we ended up, it was called, it was named for the street we were on first, just the Prairie Street Jams. But when I decided to leave Uncle John's band, we changed it to Wingnut.
That's right. Oh, wow.
And Wingnut, which was funny that turned out to be, there was another band called Wingnut in New York. And they were they were also sort of like, soul funk, acid jazz, whatever, freestyle instrumental groove music.
I think I found them when I was researching your Wingnut, and they came up, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's not John's Wingnut, but there's another Wingnut.
Yeah, but it was funny that so there was sort of me and this other guitar player that was really into Metheny and John Abercrombie and stuff, and we kind of went through a few different bass players and drummers and keyboard players trying things out. So it's almost too bad that we didn't stick with it long enough to eventually merge, because I think the other Wingnut in New York was just bass, drums, and keys.
Oh, wow.
And we were like a guitarist and a guitarist electric violinist looking for bass, drums, and keys.
Oh.
But I did eventually, I think, meet one or two of them and
fun.
Have a fun conversation about what might have been. But
right.
But anyway, so what out of that, and we're still kind of like having informal Grateful Dead jams at Mike's house, and then somebody, another musician in town who actually also owned a little head shop called Sunshine Daydream, where he had a little he had a taper room, and we went by the nickname Tiny. He had a group called Jahari's Window. And they
Oh,
were going through what groups go through, and personnel was going to be changing, and he was trying to decide whether to replace the people that were going to quit and carry on, or whether to just finish it up with the guys and then hang it up. And so he contacted me and to possibly sub for some players, or while he looked for permanent players, and
right.
said that the other player that he was talking to was Scott Larned, the keyboard player, who actually I hadn't gotten to play with, and it just sort of crossed paths with them at a few different parties over the years, and I was actually kind of I was kind of curious to jam with him at some point. So and
Right.
then it turns out like, I don't know, it might have been the same party. I don't know, when we were both pretty young, way before, like 1990 or something, crossing paths at a party in Rogers Park or Evanston or something.
Right.
And I came across my first copy of a Dead Bass,
Oh.
and I was like, wow, this would be a really cool way for a band to learn to just learn the songs, to like pick set lists out and like, okay, let's learn all these songs in this style for next week's jam or whatever. And I was inspired a little bit by, there's like there used to be a band, I think they were called the Garcia Birthday Band out of Portland, Oregon. And their thing was, or I think they changed it to the Once a Year Band. And this is like once a year they got together to play just Grateful Dead songs,
Oh my gosh.
But, so there's that, I saw all kinds of different things happening, but once I got in touch with Scott on the phone, and we were both hip to this idea of doing set lists, and he was friends with one of the owners of a club that had just opened called Martyrs,
right?
And by a guy who'd been in the Chicago scene. Ray Quinn was that founder, co-owner, and he'd been a bit of a fixture in the roots rock, folk, jazz scene in Chicago. Was involved with a club called Shuba's. Worked on the production staff at the Park West at one point, and so this was, he had a club called Otis's that wrapped up, and so this was his latest greatest club opening, and he was looking for a Tuesday night house band, and so there was Dark, and then we finally, once we pulled that together, we pulled a couple, we got Amir on drums originally, and then started looking for a second drummer,
right?
And the guy who I had originally envisioned as second drummer wasn't living in the Chicago area anymore. So we tried a couple of guys that didn't work out, and then this guy moved back. So who actually, oddly enough, was a bit of a lookalike for Mickey Hart. Mark Corsellini.
Wow, added bonus.
Yeah, I think he plays around the Bay Area now still.
Right.
But
right.
Anyway.
Well, you intended to be a kind of a one night a week cover band, though, right?
Or one night, exactly. And we all played with other bands. We all had I still had Wingnut going. Right. Amir still played with Jerry's Kids. Kevin still played with Uncle John's band. And
what changed that, John? What changed that? And you guys saying, "Hey, we've got a thing that's pretty amazing here. Let's take it forward."
Well, it went through a few processes, and one of them was that by our eighth show, our first show was the first Tuesday of a November, and Chicago winters are pretty harsh.
Yeah, yeah.
And so by our eighth show was like the last week of December, and it's cold outside, and people were, we were selling out the room in first set, and people were lining up outside hoping people would leave after the first set so they could come in for second set.
Oh my God.
So we're like, wow, maybe we have something.
Right.
And then, and then the Jam Productions contacted us to play at the Park West, make an all ages show at the Park West. And that was, that was the following June. So, the band had only been in existence for 4 or 5 months when they made the offer to us. And
Wow.
And then, but unfortunately, at that point, there some stuff some interpersonal stuff came to a head between the, the Mike and Kevin. But they had been old, they were like old tour buddies.
Right.
And then like some of their old tour stuff started to come up.
Oh
Like,
my.
oh, when we were to host this hotel in whatever Lansing, Michigan,
Yeah. Do you remember when yeah, that's
right?
well,
But
yeah.
and so Kevin said, I don't need this. I'm going to stay with Uncle John's band, and but then we brought Mike Hazard, who had played with a group, another group that I really loved called the Deadbeats.
Right.
Um, who didn't always necessarily sound exactly like the Dead, but they had the psychedelic spirit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Nailed.
What I found was interesting, John, is you founded Dark Star about 2 years after Jerry had passed. Was there any kind of initiative to say, yeah, let's carry this further because he's gone? Did it have anything to do with the mindset? Maybe not anything commercially, but just, yeah, I want to kind of help continue this legacy. And also, you began to obviously become an emulator. And again, you have multiple talents, but one of them is again to emulate Jerry singing and playing quite incredibly. And I think that was a big draw, obviously, but it was right around, a couple of years after he passed. What was the thought process or evolution, or was it just, we want to play this music?
Well, there was a little bit, maybe there was a little bit of seeing some drama unfold around a couple of other bands in the area that I watched them kind of do their initial hirings and approach them kind of just as a networker, as a Chicago deadhead, just wanting to know what's going on. And that was when I discovered that there are some people who don't give a damn about the greater community, and they just look at it as a they look at deadheads the way a wolf looks at a pack of sheep,
Right.
Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
as opposed to looking at the pack of sheep as like the smartest black sheep in the pack or whatever. I don't know. I don't know. No, I don't need to, But so there was a little bit of like, what, if there's going to be a dead tribute act, it ought to be all deadheads, and it ought to be, so, and we had that. So I just thought, well, we should run with it,
Yeah. I mean,
and
did you
started
have,
getting offers from around the country, and then a booking agent from Madison, Wisconsin, who had booked, Michael Hedges and David Grisman Quintet. And,
oh, wow.
so he had experience with unusual acts looking for their just right venue, and it was a really great fit for a long time.
Did you have any idea at that point, and this is a kind of a question that's often asked about things that excel to a certain point, did you have any idea that you guys would really become the quintessential representation of the Dead? And I mean, I have multiple Deadhead friends who revere you and the band, and at that, when you had your steam rolling with them, did you have any idea that it would become what it became?
I mean, it went from a no to a yes, I guess.
Right.
At some point, when when our first time coming into San Francisco, we got to play a 2-night run at the Fillmore.
Oh.
So that's a good sign.
Yeah, not bad.
And then Dennis McNally's giving us nice reviews, and many of their former crew members really liked coming to see us. Some of whom looked at the way we would set up the stage plot to match the year of the show we were doing.
Right.
They looked at it as a tribute to them, because they're like, the crew were like, we made the stage plots.
Right.
We created figured out that, the combination of interpersonal and production that needed to go into it.
Right. Yeah.
I always looked at that as like really the only thing we did as far as a look-alike thing. Where we kind of steered away from ever trying to do a look-alike thing.
Right.
Sometimes I understand how it just happens. It's hard not to do certain things with your body when you're playing Bobby songs or Jerry
Right.
songs for that matter. I mean, you don't really got to do much for Jerry to just kind of rock around, but
Right. Well, you both wear glasses, so there's one to look alike.
Well, and that's what I point to that as being as where Buddy Holly, is really the overarching influence for both the Beatles, the Stones, and the Grateful Dead.
Right.
That they're all like, well, here's a guy who's not afraid to look nerdy, who writes his own music, plays lead guitar in his band, and leads a band around the country.
Right.
So like even Paul McCartney played guitar before he switched to bass in the band, and
absolutely,
and like I say, you see the Buddy Holly influence all over the place there.
This is again one of my favorite songs. Saw the Dead do it at least 2 or 3 times. Dark Star at least once. This is a little bit of Terrapin Station.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's just something about that. That was one of the first records that appealed to me. In my open tonight, I told everybody that I didn't know of the Dead very well until I got to college, and then I had college friends just seeping it on top. And for some reason, Terrapin got to me early on, and had to show that. Have another one from 2007. This is from the Great American Music Hall on March 31st, and I love the way you got this sounds. again, I could have played 50 songs you guys do, being such a fan of yours and also of the Dead, but I just love the way this thing churns along a bit. You Dead fans know it who are watching tonight. I know there's a bunch of you. This is Half Step Mississippi, Uptown Toodaloo. Yeah, John, there's a real sense of what you guys tried to do from the beginning of that band until, the band continues now. And then, you left in 2009, but it was just, it's just wonderful to get that sense of the Grateful Dead. And also you guys just are fabulous players. It must've felt really well as that band was going along, right?
Yeah, there are a lot of really, really great moments for sure.
Yeah, I bet. And they were wonderfully revered, and continue to have a history. 2003-ish, you released a self-produced solo EP. So that was kind of fun, right? That, little solo stuff.
Yeah, it was just something I was hitting a bit of a writer's block on sort of having my own, I don't know, ideas that I write for a band, and
right.
Not having a band to write for was kind of stalling me out. So I kind of did this record as a little sort of to create a simple style that I could write for, just write for my own studio environment. So that, it was called Acoustic Shareware Volume 1.
Right.
With the notion there'd be a Volume 2, Volume 3 or whatever, which never didn't really happen quite that way. But in the process of kind of like trying to promote it and play some solo shows and do some, I wasn't doing the whole acoustic electric thing yet with looping and guitar synth sounds. It was just acoustic guitar.
Right.
In the process of that, I got connected with some people, some different venues who got the idea of that was sort of the trigger that got me doing some gigs with Melvin.
Yeah, great.
The first place I booked myself into solo, I was sort of just on a day off on Dark Star Orchestra tour.
Mm-hmm.
And then out of that, they're like, well, why don't we have you back for like 4 days, and one of them will be a solo show, and 2 or 3 of them will put you together with Melvin or something. And then we hit it off. Then once that happened, some other people, other promoters and venues and around the country got the idea to do similar things, and eventually came the notion to form this group called The Mix.
Right.
To do not so much a Jerry Garcia tribute thing, but although we could play all that as common songs, but to do new original songs or old original songs that,
right.
But new to new audiences anyway.
And that's as Dark Star Orchestra was still fully in form, right? You were
correct. This is all being sliced in between Dark Star Orchestra tours, and that ended up being what kind of killed the group ultimately. Is after 3 years of trying to schedule tours between Dark Star Orchestra tours, we just weren't getting out enough to make anything happen.
Right.
And to grow it, and we actually gotten signed to a recording contract.
Rain Man Records, right?
Yeah.
And American Spring, so you got to do a full up record, and it actually had Greg collaborating a little with Robert Hunter and you sung them, so that had to be another kind of little dead history thrill to have Robert involved.
Cool. And it's been interesting hearing more stories about the American Spring. What the lyrics were kind of, Hunter had written them while Jerry was still alive. And and they were kind of in the folder as potential new material when Jerry died, and so it kind of got passed around to a few different players, but no one had done anything with it except Greg.
Wow.
He had kind of a demo of it. It was it didn't really have, it only had the melody like sketched out even. It's just sort of following the chord changes. So I wrote a melody for it, and I kind of did a little bit of rearranging some of the chords, and
oh man.
And it was quite a treat to get to work on that. The other Hunter song we did for that album was one that Robert Hunter wrote for John Lee Hooker.
Oh God.
And John Lee Hooker died before turning it into a song.
Wow.
So, Greg also had a demo for that, and we pretty much followed Greg's demo on that one. Although I've since kind of gave it an overhaul into what I thought was a little more like what John Lee Hooker might have done with it.
Oh, really?
But
really? Oh, that's fantastic. Greg, a couple of your Hairball Willie songs made it onto the record.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep. And apparently the What's Become of Mary was like kind of like the song that inspired the record label to offer us the contract, because at least I don't know that they said so much directly, but when I was sort of negotiating the publishing and stuff, I was like, well, we don't have to do any of my songs. And they're like, well, we don't have to pony up to record you either. So,
right. Oh my God. Around 2006, as you were saying, the Mix ended up going on hiatus. I guess Dark Star Orchestra obviously continued to surge along. 2000.
That's right around the time Scott died too, which meant that we also had to we canceled half a tour and had to do a lot of makeup gigs, and ended up being just about the busiest year, most shows I'd ever done in 1 year with DSO. It just didn't leave any room for side projects, and so it just, after 2 or 3 seasons of not being able to book any shows, the band's kind of in hiatus, whether they're saying so or not.
Right.
So
it was, again, about 20 years since your first Dead show, about 7-10 years since Dark Star started, and Furthur began in your life with Bob and Phil. I mean, how did that, I mean, you've answered this question multiple times, but not on Living on Music. So give us the general nutshell story of how you got to play with those guys and become, again, a real part of this whole journey.
Well, I was on tour with Dark Star Orchestra. I think we were in Burlington, Vermont, at the Higher Ground, and
Wow.
I'm going through my I'm backstage on my laptop, going through my AOL email and checking the spam folder for stuff that landed there accidentally. And there's one in the spam folder that's from somebody named Matt Bush that says Bob and Phil want to play with you,
Oh my
basically.
God.
And I thought I was being pranked.
Right.
I didn't know who
Who
Matt
wouldn't?
Bush was, and I'm like, yeah, right. You're funny. But and the phone number looked like it's still Matt's phone number. I'm not going to spell it out here, obviously, but it doesn't look like, it has like 4 zeros in it or something like that. It looks like a fake number, uh, but and then I kind of go to Rob Baracco and I'm like, who's Matt Bush? and, and Rob knew who Matt
Yeah.
Bush was. So
Wow.
he's like, Bob's manager. Why are you asking?
Whoa.
I'm like, oh, I don't know.
Yeah. What's going on here?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But tried to kind of keep it secret, but the cat was out of the bag before even So like, if I replied to it, and then I get another email. Oh, by the way, can you keep it in confidence that I've contacted you? I'm like, well,
Darn it.
you might
Okay.
want to put that in the first email.
Well, it couldn't have been too long. How long was it between you reading that email backstage and you actually meeting up with those guys and beginning
Well,
to?
it was like a June. It was like June when the email came, and I was calling, talking to Robbie Taylor like a couple weeks later about setting up a 4-day audition, and even in the phoning in advance, he was sort of like, I don't know if this is audition or rehearsal.
Rehearsal, right? Oh
And
God.
but whatever, you'll be there, and we'll get I figured out how. I'm trying to remember how I got some gear there.
Oh my
I must have
God.
gotten my basic, a fly in something. I forget what I did,
Right.
but and
How did that feel,
yeah,
John? I mean,
that was it was pretty wild. So it didn't have a name yet. They were just calling it the Bob and Phil Show, and they had launched like business paperwork launched a business entity that was the Bob and Phil Show, and
well,
that's what my checks from them said.
that's classic.
All the way up until the last 4 days of jamming together, and I think we launched into a plane in the band and had about a 10-minute jam with it.
Oh my
and,
God.
and I thought it was pretty good at that point, but
Right.
um,
And it was comfortable with them being the fact that there had, there had been some issues here and there with collaboration and Phil and Bob playing together, and later that Phil would go do his thing, but it felt comfortable at that point and Furthur felt like a nice
oh
environment.
yeah, absolutely. It felt like it felt like kind of like a small, two brothers starting up a new business. It wasn't there was nobody further up than Bob and Phil. They were they had their respective number ones kind of helping them that they were happy with. And in Bob's case, that was Matt Bush, but in Phil's case, that was Jill.
Right.
And I don't know. There's a lot of rap about Jill. I think it's all a bunch of baloney. She was great.
Oh, that's fantastic.
She's a pleasure to work with, professional,
Oh,
and clearly loved Phil and their family. And Phil loved her. And what else is there to say?
yeah. And right. And
Yeah.
for who came up with I know what Furthur is, the Merry Pranksters bus, but what was,
Well, what's funny is after the 4 days that we're scheduled there of audition or whatever it is, and after the second day, Matt pulls the 4 J's aside and it says, "Well, they think this is a band, and if you guys are you guys good to clear your schedules for next year? We're ready to call this a band, and the next 2 days will be formally rehearsal, and but we got to come up with a band name.
oh man.
So I don't know what. So I go home, I call my mom. It's West Coast time. She's in Cincinnati, so it's pretty late. But I call my mom, and she'd been having some fascination at that point with the actual Furthur bus, which the original Furthur bus was deteriorating in a forest, in Springfield, Oregon.
Wow.
And she's an artist and just has always been fascinated with rust as part of one of her subject matters. And so there's this old rusty bus, and I'm telling my mom, like, well, that's it. It's a band. Now we have to come up with a name. And she says, Furthur. And I'm like, well, here's the thing. I said, I don't know how, I know it's not all perfectly copacetic between the Grateful Dead camp and the Kesey camp. And I don't know how how that'll fly or whatever. So, like my mom suggests it, and I shoot it down. And then, so then after the third day of rehearsal, like Phil, early in that day says, well, we're going to have y'all want to come to my place for a barbecue after it's been one of my traditions when we form a new band is to have the band over to my house for a backyard barbecue. And at that backyard barbecue, the subject of band name comes up again. We're just sitting around a picnic table with Bobby and Phil and the rest of the 4Js and and we're like, we're gonna come up with a name. And then Bobby says, how about Furthur?
Did he really?
And we're like, I'm like, really?
Oh my God.
And I never told him. I never told him the story about the conversation I had with my mom the night before, but
you didn't want to take away his glory of the name.
Oh, whatever, this is
funny.
Exactly. I didn't want to be like competing for origins or anything, but it's a true story though.
She gets the original credit then. I'm sure Bobby wouldn't wane at this point. Oh my God. That is spectacular. And again, that seemed to be a tight, coherent, wonderful, part of the Grateful Dead post-Jerry evolution. I mean, did you feel that the community of Dead heads and fans and people welcomed you guys with open arms? I mean, I could tell they did.
Oh, definitely. I mean, whatever. There's the Phil Zone was the place where all the people who, the Grateful Dead scene is going back to the Grateful Dead movie, Jerry edited that, and he chose to edit in the scenes with the kids that are like, this is the biggest bunch of crap the Grateful Dead's ever done. Am I getting a
refund?
No, it wasn't a refund. They wanted royalties for being an extra in their movie, and
oh my God.
So I mean that's just part of the scene. I never had to, I would sometimes play with them, but those haters never really cut too deep.
No.
But other than that, it felt like it felt to me like I might have imagined like the 76 to 78 period where they were like, I mean, people tend to disregard and forget that the first time the Grateful Dead played RFK Stadium was 1970. That was whatever, I think 1972 or 73, and 500,000 people came.
Yes.
Like, it was like a Woodstock level event, but just the Grateful Dead, Allman Brothers, and the band.
Right.
They were big before Touch of Grey came out. That's what I'm getting at. And they chose to scale back. They built it up to the Wall of Sound thing, to where they needed two massive sound systems to leapfrog each other around the country, and they decided it was too much work. And when they brought it back in '76, they opted to not do stadiums and to keep it at college town field houses and medium-sized theaters.
You had to you had to make a choice there, it seemed, and you ended up leaving Dark Star Orchestra. They've continued. Yep. Was that a tough decision to make? Were there any issues, or they understood?
In some ways, I was ready to move on.
Okay.
There was, I kind of learned, like, my biggest takeaway from playing, I don't know, at that point it was something like 1,200 shows, and, we repeated some shows, but I bet I did at least 600-700 unique Grateful Dead set lists.
Oh my God.
And, over those 1,200 shows. And, my biggest takeaway at that point was that almost every one of those shows had a song or two in it that were not on an album yet.
Oh,
So when you were at that show, you know, like a key part of every Grateful Dead set lists, you know, when Jerry was alive, were songs that you probably didn't know,
right.
you
Exactly.
know, and that was, for me, that was what was missing, what I was starting to miss with the DSO experience. And
Right.
we'd sort of addressed it early on with at least, you know, like doing an extra encore,
Mhm.
because doing the shows usually had an encore, and like doing an obligatory encore as part of the set list to me felt like, I don't know, kind of staged
Right.
or fake or whatever. So
Right.
we were always do like at least one or two extra songs beyond it to be like, okay, now here's, you know, here's something you won't know, you know, you can't anticipate, you know, because you know the whole point of Dead Bass, the whole point of Dead Bass's existence is to deal with a cassette that the label fell off of,
Right.
basically. So you got a cassette, and you could, you know, you listen to it back and you write down the songs, and then you can look up the first song in Dead Bass, and there's a section where it lists every time that song was played and what song was played after it or before. Yeah, and so, you know, pretty much three or four songs into any show we had, anybody that knew how to use a Dead Bass knew what show we were doing and knew every song that was coming next.
Right.
You know, and some of them would be shouting it out and stuff like that.
We got a great clip here, John. I just love it. Kind of has the feel and the energy of Furthur from 2013 at the Sweetwater Music Hall, featuring Phil, Bob, Jeff, John, Joe, Sunshine, and Jeff. This is a song that even I, in my little midlife cover band world over the last 15 years, have sung, and I relish singing it every time. This is Furthur with Deal Go Down.
Since it costs a lot to win, and even more to lose, you and me bound to spend some time just wondering what to choose. Goes to show you don't ever know. Watch each card you play and play it slow. Wait till that deal come out. Don't you let that deal go down. Oh no. I've been gambling hereabouts for 10 good solid years. If I told you all that went down, you know it burn off both your little ears. Goes to show you don't ever know. Watch each card you play and play it slow. Wait till that deal comes out. Don't you let that deal go down. No, no.
Wait till that deal come around.
Yeah, right. Don't you let that. deal go down. I love that. And it's just so fun to see you up there playing with those guys, especially with your history. And God, that's great. You stayed with those guys for about 5 years until Furthur went on a hiatus, I guess in around 2014-ish. And we know what's happened since then with Phil and Friends and Bobby and the Rat. I mean, a little of everything. You've had a bunch of stuff going on since then. You've got the John Kadlecik band, right? That is really kind of one of your centers, and will continue to be coming out of this, right? You want to continue to be playing that big time.
Well, that was just part of that was a decision of like because I tend to with few exceptions, consider a band to be locked down with its people,
Right.
So, and then the idea of like working with a lot of different players, or I just finally decided to create a billing that just bill as John Kadlecik Band, so I don't have to I don't have to change the name when players change.
Right, exactly.
Because I consider the Golden Gate Wingmen to be locked down. Like that's four guys. That's me, Jeff, Jay, and Reed.
Yes.
And and I sort of created a spin-off. The Fellowship of the Wing is sort of like what we call it when we have to find a substitute for the Golden Gate Wingmen. But,
right.
But then Jay kind of became my go-to drummer.
Yeah.
For the John Kadlecik Band too, and so I don't know. He and I definitely, and I feel really tight. I mean, I love all three of them. Definitely feel super tight with Jeff and Jay.
And the Wingmen,
from having
the
toured with them.
Right, the Wingmen are going to continue forward.
Yep. And so just sort of waiting for Jeff to get clearance. I think he's kind of being part of Dead and Co. I don't want to. I don't need to pin it on anyone. We'll just say that it's just he's still holding off on indoor shows, and
right.
So and he's got Dead and Co. schedule coming up, and so
yeah,
I don't want to conflict with that.
Right. Yep. I had tickets to see them, and the pandemic, and boom, that was one of 10 shows that blew up. But yeah, we'll get back to that. In 2018, you released a solo album, On the Road, and I've been playing a lot of this since I've been digging into your world, and I love it. I really do. The original songs are great. You got Lazy River Road and So Many Roads, a couple of Dead covers. What was the impetus behind wanting to do On the Road?
Well, it was just having done a bunch of shows with Jay and or that lineup of the John Kadlecik Band with Jay, Robin Sylvester on bass, and this amazing local keyboard player, Benji Parecki, that I met through Keller Williams' Grateful Gospel.
Wow.
And he did, just and I had the I was doing some gigs, and if I was going to have Jay and Robin were going to be in town a few days, so I just booked a couple days in the studio. I didn't really know what would come, wasn't sure what would come of it.
Wow.
But after 2 days of running through tunes, we had the basic tracks for a whole record.
Yeah.
And I decided there should be an album. Yeah.
Well, it's wonderful, and I'm glad you did this. This is a song I wanted to roll for you guys, a little bit of it, and it is from John's 2018 record, On the Road. This is It's All Right.
Folks see a problem, and others see a cause. Walking the thin line we wrap around our laws. But I see a new day shining bright. We're alright. Now there are some who will shudder at the thought of you demanding the rights our fathers taught. They are trying to kill the dawn with the night. We're alright. got nothing to say that they're not aware of. But don't let them suffocate your light, 'cause you're all right.
I love that, John. Love to hear It's All Right. It's fun to hear some of your stuff like that, and can't wait to see what the future holds for all of your writing and music. We've got one more clip that we'll throw out there for your Deadhead fans. This is again from a wonderful show. I listened to the entire thing yesterday, and I'm like, you got to concentrate on doing the show rundown. I'm like, no, I'm watching this whole Splintered Sunlight show. It's so fun. This is again with Splintered Sunlight to take you guys out with before we say farewell to again the Ardmore Music Hall in Ardmore, Pennsylvania. It was I guess a live webcast that helped try to raise money for bands / people who worked at the Ardmore and things like that. Is that right, John? Yeah.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. What a wonderful, thing to do, as well as get your asses out on stage playing and with each other. I love this. Yeah. And this is something, again, this is an album that came out right around the time that I fell in love with the Dead. Again, an album produced by Lowell George. This is the title cut, Shakedown Street.
All right.
But what a wonderful job on that. And, John Kadlecik, I can't tell you what a thrill to be able to hear you talk about this career you've had. I've, again, known your name for your career, and to be able to have you on here to talk about it. Thanks so much for taking the time of being on Living on Music, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, Steve.
My pleasure. And good luck with getting out of this thing. You've got a lot of things churning.
And it's actually it's a double early and late show on Sunday in Denver, and then Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday with Melvin. Thursday we fly to Arkansas to play Friday and Saturday at a little festival in Arkansas, and then flying back and then back here for a couple of days before going to Mexico to do 2 nights with like a variation on the thing we did last month. And so then it just continues on. Stuff's still in flux. Some stuff that's happening is getting canceled before it announces, but but other Well, I'm playing regularly with Melvin Seals now, so
Right. Yeah. And remember, we can't leave out mentioning the DC Mystery Cats with my buddy Larry Josoloff. And
ah,
what's really funny is that I think the night that you might have played with them was the night I was playing over at the Vinyl Lounge right next there in the
oh
wall
yeah.
with my cover band, because Larry came over and I'm like, Larry, you're here. You're going to watch us play. We might have sucked. If you'd walked in, I might have just said, I can't do this.
Ah,
But anyway, that's great that you play with those guys too. Anyway, best of luck in the next year, getting out of this and future stuff.
Thanks.
And let's keep in touch. Let me know what you're doing, and good luck with everything, man. Thanks again.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Whew. Well, as a almost lifetime Grateful Dead fan, I can't tell you what that meant to have John Kay on. Thank you, John, so much. Best of luck as you bounce out of this thing. You guys are going to have no problem surging forward. And so honored that you take the time and share some stories about one of my favorite bands of all time and how you've become a part of the legacy. Congratulations. Coming up on Living in Music a week from tonight, the Whammy winner for Best Blues Artist, the most recent, the amazing Carly Harvey, also a member of the Honey Larks with Jenny Langer and Holly Montgomery. Can't wait to talk to Carly about her blues evolution, her musical evolution, her influences, and a lot more a week from tonight on Living on Music. May 24th, Robert Barry. What an amazing show that's going to be. American guitarist, vocalist, record producer, played with Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer in Three, played with Ambrosia, played with Hush, plays now with Greg Kinn. An amazing career that Robert Barry has had and still does at 70 years old, 71. We'll talk to him on May 24th and May 31st. A real favorite of local musicians in the around here. Just people adore Todd Wright. Wonderful songwriter, great performer, really great guy to collaborate with and play with. We're going to be joined by Todd and his lovely daughter, Ryan Wright, who just signed a record contract. And they're going to be talking about how music came into both of their lives. And can't wait for those next 3 weeks of Living on Music. Coming up next, we begin an amazing run for ZTV. And it is Virginia Amos, who is going to be talking to a whole host of Alexandria's Democratic candidates who are looking for your vote for Alexandria City Council and Mayor. You go to Zebra Press, which is facebook.com/Zebra Press, and find ZTV, and you'll be able to find all the information you need about what Virginia's going to be, who she's going to be talking to tonight. Right after the show, Bill Rossello, who is a council candidate, is going to be talking to Bill about his goals and missions as if he makes city council. And you're going to be hearing a lot from the next couple of weeks from ZTV about this amazing time of year with elections in Alexandria. So be sure to stick to ZTV for that. Until then, Living on Music is a production of Zebra Press. We want to thank Lainey Delaney, my co-producer and editor, and also the Zebra Press publisher, our Queen Zebra, Mary Wadland. Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for Virginia and her first city council candidate. Until then, remember to always be the good news in someone's life.
He didn't want to bring anyone out on the tours. There was 3 tours he had been working on all of his career to do himself an evening with, and it was going to be in the Round, which was innovative at that time.
Yes.
In these big arenas, and he was going to have string sections in other rooms of the place, closed circuit, and really do this thing. And he had been planning on it. I built a special stage and everything. But Milt, who was also John's producer, who was our producer, who was also all of our publisher, had what you would think would be a perfunctory meeting with John to pitch the idea of Starland Vocal Band opening the shows
right
on this tour that he had coming up starting in January, I think it was. It was an early spring, late winter, early spring tour. And Milt related the meeting as, well, gee, Milt, I've been working for this all my career, and I'm really kind of got my sights set on doing this. But do you think it would make the difference? I mean, would this mean them having a hit record? Have a shot at that? And Milt said, yeah.
Wow.
Okay, we'll make it work. So John brought us out, and he didn't want to have an opening act. Of course, he had put all the pieces in place to have it be that. Really, it was his label.
Right.
So his and Jerry Weintraub, who was all of our managers at the time, and Milt,
Wow.
who was all of our publisher and producer at the time. So yeah, and it was like in the movies where you do your show, and next week on the plane or the bus or in the car, you're checking Billboard and Cashbox, and you see all the places that you played last week added your record, you know?
Right.
You started playing it. All the radio stations start playing your record in your wake.
Wow.
And then, yeah, so that was how Afternoon Delight happened, basically.
And it hit #1. And I didn't know if I knew that the John Denver influence sounded like a wonderful kind of push wave for you guys. This clip I love so much. It's from '76, so right in the heyday of you guys hitting it big. I love the fact that it's John introing you. I love that it's Merv Griffin, because it was my era too. I was 15 around there. And that must have been fun to be on Merv's show too also. But here's John Denver introing John and Bill and Taffy and Margot and the Starland Vocal Band on the Merv Griffin Show.
And tell us a little bit about Starland Vocal Band.
The Starland Vocal Band is composed of Bill and Taffy Danoff, who were here earlier, and also two other folks from Washington, D.C., John Carroll and Margot Chapman. And Bill and Taffy, as I've known them for quite a few years, got together with these two other people, and Bill and Taffy have done a few albums on their own, and Bill, I think, is one of the finest songwriters around. And just over the past year, they got together with these other two folks and started singing, and they have just a really totally unique vocal sound, and they do more with their vocals than what a lot of people are doing in music today. And it was a very exciting thing for me to hear when I heard it, and I was really pleased to have the chance to play the tape that we had for some other people with Winsong Records. And
have you recorded them?
Yes, they have. In fact, if I may, this is their album cover, the Starland Vocal Band, and it's just out this week.
Look at that.
When
you know how many empty ones I get? Just covers. I think some company test covers on this show
just for TV,
and they don't even make the record.
Well, that is a real record, and it will play. And when it plays, it will sound as good as this.
The Starland Vocal Band.
My motto's always been, when it's right. Why wait until the middle of a cold, dark night? When everything's a little clearer in the light of day. And we know the night is always gonna be here anyway.
Thinking of you's working up my appetite. Looking forward to a little afternoon delight. Rubbing sticks and stones together make this long take light. And the thought of rubbing you is getting so exciting. Sky rockets in flight. Afternoon delight. Afternoon delight.
Long ago I was just a child. I grew up fast with so many music dreams.
What was the impetus behind the beginning of the Trini trilogy?
Well, we started off just doing a couple songs, and before I knew it, we had 10. And he said, hey, let's just do an album. And then before I knew it, 10 didn't stop, 12, 14, 18 songs. We had so many songs, we put it like on a double album, but it's on the first one called All Original Songs. And then he called me up and said, let's do a all original Christmas album, 14 more songs. Then he calls me and said, My friend Elvis did gospel, a great gospel album. Trini had really good faith about his religion, like we're both Catholics. And so we wrote a 14-song Christian song album. So we had all 3 albums, and we were talking about ideas. And I said, how about Trini Trilogy? He goes, oh, Joe, what do you say? What do you do? I like it. And so, boom, we released the Trini Trilogy, and it's 3 CDs of 47 songs in one package. And then we did Here I Am.
Oh, just spectacular, man. I just love what you did with him. It's so moving, not only fun and exciting and enthusiastic, but just moving, the relationship you two had. This is one of my favorite moments with Trini and Joe that I've seen and all the stuff that I've looked, and I've looked at a lot of this gentleman and Trini over the last month or two. But this is a beautiful song that Trini and Joe wrote, and it really shows Trini being able to kind of express, Joe, you did this. This is why you did it. I mean, he's expressing his life, he's expressing his gratefulness for people to respect him in his career and in his life. This is Trini and Joe, and Here I Am.
And I want to thank you all for all your support all through the years. From my heart.
Adios.
Long ago I was just a child. I grew up fast with so many music dreams. Played guitar and hoped and prayed. I got my chance to sing to the world. People listen as I travel far. I help my family with the money I made. My life is music, and I thank you all. I'll keep on singing till the heavens call for me. Here I am. I'll keep singing to the world. Here I am. Till the hands of time. Songs make your world come alive, and your soul will never die. So many people, they have smiled when I sang all my songs. Here I am for yesterday has come and gone. Years have passed, but my voice is strong to sing for you. The memories do echo loud. My love for life is to hear the crowd sing with me. All my years are my songs from the heart. Here I am. I'll keep singing to the world. And hoped and prayed. I got my chance to sing to the world.